It's going. Hi, my name is Jenica Delaney. I'm a writer at Pine Reads Review, and today I will be interviewing Tracy Badua. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. About her book, The and the Mischief Makers. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I am Tracy Badua. I write middle grade and young adult. And my next book that's coming out is Thea and the Mischief Makers, like you said. And it is middle grade and it is a lot of fun. It's got Brazilian jiu-jitsu and like stunt warrior, American ninja kind of stuff. And then, of course, because middle grade authors are terrible to their characters, I threw in two goblins who are bent on destroying her town.
So, thank you so much. We're gonna get started with the interview. So first question I had to you was, according to your bio, you are an attorney by day and a writer by night. Really commendable. As a writer myself, it's difficult to find time to write while also working and taking care of, and you have a family to take care of. I guess the question would be, how do you stay motivated to write, and when are you able to find time to like get in that writing headspace?
So in terms of finding time, like I joke, but not really that I don't sleep. Like I don't sleep. But so a weird thing is that I work on East Coast hours. So I'm actually up and working by like 6:30 in the morning, but that means I'm done at 3. Then I hang out with the family for a few hours and I like throw them off to bed and then try to get some writing in. But I also am one of those folks who doesn't have I don't write every day. So if I have a project that I'm working on, I will try to set aside time, like I just said. But otherwise, like I will try to get sleep and I will try to enjoy my weekends. But in terms of motivation, I mean, I like writing. I like the putting an idea onto the page. And one of the kind of cool things that I've noticed recently is I my daughter's super proud. She's 5. She's super proud of me for writing books. She's just like, Mommy, you should come talk to my school. I'll tell everyone to shush. I'm like, ooh, I just gave you some power. I don't know how I feel about that. But it's like it's nice. Like it's kind of nice that my stories are making a little bit of an impact on younger kids. My daughter's like a different story. That power trip is like separate. But I do get like young readers telling me like, oh, I really enjoyed like Freddy versus the Family Curse or The Takeout, and hopefully they'll enjoy Thea.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I love the characters in your book so much. They were just so sweet and adorable, and I really grew to love all of them towards the end. Some of them had to have some growth, as they all do. But they felt really natural and realistic to middle school students. Can you tell me about how you got into the heads of these characters, and did your own children inspire, like the inner monologues of Thea, maybe, or any of them?
So what's interesting is with Thea, her story really goes from her being like finally being the popular kid and then trying to preserve that at all costs. And I feel like that's one of those things that I think no matter what age you are, you can probably deal with of like, I have a certain image I need to keep up. But now I'm starting a new school or I'm starting like a new job or I'm moving and I'm going to be in a place where I have to basically reinvent myself or I have to maintain that kind of image that I've been trying to project. So in her case, like when she goes from, oh, I'm really great at Brazilian jiu-jitsu to, oh no, I'm afraid of heights and I've signed up to leap from platform to platform as summer camp. I just think like that kind of struggle, it was not hard for me to put myself in that place of like, oh, when was the last time like I tried something new and I knew I wasn't going to be good at it and I didn't want to be not good at it. So it's really just imagining, it's insert embarrassing emotion here into like the different parts of my life and like throw it into the book.
Awesome. Yeah, kind of childhood memories that fear. Awesome.
Right. Memories, trauma, like a little bit of a little bit of me.
This next question's kind of a little silly, but there's so many great characters. Who was your favorite in your own book, Thea, or in The Mischief Makers? And then who was your favorite character to write for?
Ooh. So in this book specifically, one of my favorite characters, and this is not a spoiler because she's literally also on the cover, but Dora is one of the duendes. And my favorite thing about her is she is very food motivated. And as readers like go through it, they'll realize like, oh, Thea starts to at least get Dora to soften up towards her by like plying her with treats. And that's just kind of funny to me because I feel like that's a lot of people I know, including myself, that if it's like if you show up with like a cookie, I'll be like, "Oh, okay. Okay, now we're friends." um, but I think like in general to write for like so it's always fun to write and not so much the bad guy because I don't write like evil villains trying to really just like destroy the earth and that kind of thing. I kind of write like misunderstood bad guys, if that makes sense. So like in Thea, it was obviously like it was so much fun writing the Duendes. And then some of my other books, so like Freddy versus a Family Curse comes to mind, and that was my first middle grade. There's like a ghost that Freddy is trying to kind of get rid of. And like it was fun writing him because he's not, he's just there to make things a little tougher for the main character.
Someone who complicates the plot, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's fun is you do it through the character, but it's like it's you, the writer, that are complicating everything. So that's kind of the
Are
fun
the
part of it.
control. Yeah.
You have to find out ways to like, okay, how can I make this worse for them? And that's always fun.
Yeah. Great. So personally, my favorite was Evan. I really loved his message, like the message on patience and kindness when interacting with socially awkward people. I absolutely loved that, and I felt it was so real to middle school experiences for so many children. How did you go about writing a character as complex as this? Was there a lot of research involved, or yeah, can I just go into that?
Evan was one of those characters. So in the book, he is essentially like Thea's sidekick for a lack of better phrasing. He's like a former ex-best friend that shows up. And of course, because we complicate everything by making things a little bit awkward and a little bit, he's a little clumsy. But he was fun to write because he's kind of just like that best friend that we all need, and we don't always want to admit that we're like, it's hard to show that you're vulnerable and that you're not perfect. And Evan is that kid who's just like, that's okay. Own it. Like, I own it. Everything's good. And I feel like just writing that level of confidence in like a 12-year-old, I was like, if only we could all be that confident at
Yeah.
any age. Like at 12 would have been great, but like at any age would have been nice.
Yeah, I loved his little nerdy quirks and characteristics. He is just completely embarrassed. It just felt so true to
It's
middle
like,
school.
again, it's like it's the friend you need, even though
Yeah,
you're just like, you want to tone it down a little bit, but you're like, that's who he is.
trying to
Take it
be
or
cool.
leave it.
Yeah, awesome. So back to the Duendes, who I love. They were such an interesting twist. Like they were on the cover, but like crazy, wasn't expecting them. And they really carried the message of the story. Did you grow up with these stories yourself? And I guess, and a partner question to that would be, what came first, the Duendes or the characters?
So I was kind of joking about this with someone of like whenever I need story inspiration, I just think about all the things that like my grandmothers like threatened me with. So like duendes or like there's different little bits of folklore of like don't go over there because there's like a monster who lives there and he's gonna eat you. You're like, oh, 6-year-old, I'm not gonna go over there then because I don't want to get eaten. So duendes are just kind of one of those things that I feel like our caretakers used as a way to be like, don't go over to those random trees, don't climb that thing, don't dig over there. But for this story specifically, I knew I wanted to write like writing magic. It's just like it's always fun to me to add that extra layer of like folklore or something that's like slightly disbelievable. And duendes were a good one because it's like it's our world, but kind of adjacent.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we have a backyard and we have a house and we have fruit trees, but like Thea has duendes in her backyard. So it's adding that little extra layer I think is always fun. So for this book, I knew I wanted some sort of magical element to it and like the tree dwelling goblins totally fit.
Yeah. I They were just so cute. And I loved seeing like Dora come around to like Thea in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. And I was so interested in them. I had to do some research, the duendes. They were very fun and I loved their goblin behaviors. And
What's
just
funny is so the I definitely got those like beginnings of those stories like from my grandmothers and from older relatives and it's funny because I think of these of folklore and like superstition is kind of like an older generation thing, but I was literally talking to someone um who is younger, who is maybe like in their 30s or 40s, who was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen one before." And I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
oh, okay." Like it's still like that folklore is still really alive and well, and like there's a reason that people believe in this because there's something so strong and like intergenerational about it. I have not seen a duende. Knock on wood. I have not seen one.
Got breaking news here.
I know.
Um,
There's gonna be some young reader who's like, "What do you mean you haven't seen one? And you wrote an entire book about it?" Oh, it's gonna be sorry, kids. It's
like
it's
spoiling
fiction.
Santa.
Sorry.
Uh, while reading your novel, I couldn't help but imagine like American Ninja Warrior like setups with the jujitsu. Like I'm just imagining them swinging around in the gym. How did you decide that this would be such like a main plot point, and how it would come into the climax as well?
I am a writer and not an athlete. So when I say that this is fiction, it's that the duendes aren't real. I have never done Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I have never done an American Ninja Warrior style obstacle course. So a lot of that was researched through a lot of YouTube and TV watching, and then asking folks who are really good at those things. So with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu part, like my brother used to go to a gym over here and I'd be like, "So, is this realistic? Is this something that would happen?" And he'd kind of fill me in. Um and the I just I wanted to write a story about a girl who's just kind of just good at sports, because I feel like that's just one of those things that like I as a personality trait, I feel like we see that a lot about boy characters. Like it's kind of like a side point. It's not the main point. There just happen to be the baseball player that does X, Y, and Z. And it's like Thea just happens to be like really good at this one thing, and she's going to go try another thing. And the point is not the sport itself. It's like it's the emotional journey that's in there, and it just happens to be Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and American Ninja Warrior style stunts.
Uh, no, it was great seeing her lose confidence, kind of getting that insight into her fears, especially with the cool kids. I felt it was really relatable. And I agree. I feel like you never get the representation of women or girls in sports, especially in books. Just,
I wanted to make it like sports, but the book is not about
yeah.
sports, if that makes sense. It just like happens to be something about her that she just happens to be good at it. So like it's one of those weird things where I just wanted it to be part of her character because there's so many dimensions to who we are that really at the end of the day it's about her, like her friendship and her courage and everything. So I just wanted to add a little bit of extra so to kind of show her as a full person.
Yeah. This book is so full of representation, as we briefly discussed. Can you speak to the importance of diversity in middle grade books to you and just your writing as well?
Absolutely. So like I said, I write middle grade and young adult, and all of my books feature Filipino American main characters because I myself am Filipino American. And that's important to me because growing up, I didn't have access to a lot of stories featuring Filipino American kids. And I say access to because I'm sure they were out there. I'm sure people were writing it and either like self-publishing or it was traditionally published. I just didn't have access to it. So I didn't grow up with that. And so putting it in my stories now is really important to me because I see kind of how important it is not only for kids to see themselves in the book, but literally so that other people can see us too.
Yeah.
So that the first time that if that's like the first exposure you have to somebody is like in a positive experience through media, then like that's good. Like it's not a stereotype. You are learning a little bit about how somebody else lives. And I just figured I'd add to that with my stories with like these Filipino American kids who are just doing things, who are, you know, in these sports camps or, returning some cursed coin or having a Filipino Indian fusion food truck. They
Yeah.
just do things.
No, I love it. The books are the mirrors and the windows, if you've ever seen that TED Talk. And I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. You stated you struggled completing this book and the ending. As someone who is writing like their own own novel and knows that there's a lot of writers struggling to complete the endings. Do you have any advice on how to push through? How do you get to that completion?
My advice is just completely unglamorous because I deal with a lot of spreadsheets when I write. I am one of those people who plans everything out. And it's not that I have to follow everything like perfectly, but at least like if I if I'm at a loss for what to do, I can at least like look at the spreadsheet and be like, "Oh, okay. My goal is to have in a couple chapters at some point Thea do X, Y, and Z. So even if I have to take a detour to get there, even if I have to think of another more interesting or like easier way for her to get to that point, like at least that kind of reminds me what I'm aiming for. So I'm sorry, the answer is spreadsheets.
It's very organized. That's good though. Yeah. Plotting it all
Wish it was
out.
more exciting, but I'm like, no, it's you scroll down on that spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's great though. Okay, final question. Thank you again. Do you think we will see a sequel with Thea and the Duendes?
Ooh, that would be a lot of fun. I haven't thought that far ahead. I am barely wrapping my head around
Yeah,
the
I
fact that
know
this is
this
going to
is
get
it's
published
brand
soon.
new, but yeah.
But I think it would be really cool to kind of dive back into this world because what's cool about the Duendes is they're not the way, at least the way that I have them in my book, is they're not like they're generally not like super evil villainous characters. It's just like if you cross them, they're not gonna let it go.
Yeah.
They're gonna want to teach you your lesson. And I feel like there's some room for duendes to cause more mischief. And that means I get to come up with more like kind of funny, annoying ways to bother some middle grade characters, and that's always fun.
Teach them a lesson.
Exactly. You know, it'll be fun.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really glad to hear that you enjoyed the book.
Yeah, I think it was great representation, especially for middle grade and children readers. The characters felt really personal, and I really connected with it. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording.
All right.